Welcome to the What's Working podcast, the podcast where we ask, what's working? Hey everybody, welcome to the What's Working podcast. I am Jimmy Nash, and I'm thrilled to have in the studio today Dax Hamman, CEO of FOMO.ai, an AI-first marketing company for large and small brands. Dax, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we're going to jump right in. Tell me about FOMO.ai. What led to you creating this? When did you create it? How has your vision evolved for this?
You know, our mission from day one has been, how do you take a $10,000 plus month agency service and turn it into something that's effective, affordable for everybody without compromising on quality? And that's what we've really been able to do over the last 2 years. We got here because myself and my co-founder and some of my team have built some of the biggest agencies in the world, and also a lot of boutique agencies, and then marketing tech companies. And so having had 25 years in the space, I was really excited about the arrival of AI. And there are, of course, different ways companies and agencies can incorporate that, right? So some are saying, well, let's go fire all our staff and replace them, which is proving to be a terrible idea. Others are saying, let's keep the amount of staff we have, but let's make them more efficient. But then when it comes to selling their services, I think a lot of companies, particularly agencies in particular, they're stuck in this idea of, oh, we get to charge the same, but now finally increase our profit margins. And we look at it from the other point of view of AI and automation has got so good if used in the right way. Actually, we can take what was a very expensive service and still make nice margin on it, but make it significantly more affordable and therefore effective from a ROAS point of view for our clients.
Right. So that's awesome. That's a great way to look at it. And you talk about on your site the early mover advantage. So right now, I know AI, we're still maybe early stages, but it's growing so quickly. How much of an early mover advantage do you see right now with the companies that are going ahead and saying, okay, we need to embrace this. Let's go with FOMO and start getting this early mover advantage right now?
I'd answer it in two parts. The first part is, even though we set out to do this as sort of and build non-human marketing teams for the whole marketing capability, over the last 6 months or so and going forward, we're really laser focused on the AI search opportunity and problem, right? The AI search problem being people's clicks are going down from Google to some degree, depends on the industry. But then also they want to be in ChatGPT, they want to be in Perplexity, etc. And so we really dial in everything, technology and services towards that problem. There, I think there remains a huge early mover advantage. Because particularly if a client is in a certain category, Google call them your money or your life categories, right? Medical, legal, technical, financial, e-commerce, etc. There were some guidelines as to what you used to have to do that are now just black and white and you have to do it, right? And most of the companies I talk to every week haven't done them. So there is an enormous early mover advantage to start to become that trusted, cited source over time. With AI in general, I mean, oh my God, I think it will be an early mover advantage for a while yet. You know, if you read the poison that is LinkedIn, everybody is saying, oh, I've replaced a team of 1,000 people with, one $12 agent. And it's just BS at this point in the evolution of it. And, but also I still don't think we've reached that point where everybody's thinking AI first when trying to solve a problem. And so anybody who is putting in a decent number of hours, I don't know, 5 hours a week, on working on things with AI in partnership, they're definitely ahead and have an early mover advantage in understanding.
Interesting. So, because I know I find myself just asking every day, and of course we at our agency have had to look into other AI to include. Whenever I do something, I ask myself, could I do this better with AI, or is this still something that needs to be a human first? And I think I wanted to ask you about, there's still this tension right now between automation and AI and then authenticity. Some people don't see how they can do both. How do you think of that balance when working with clients to still have the human side of things, but use AI first?
So authenticity matters, human quality, particularly for AI search where you're generating a lot of long form articles. The human quality matters. And so we have really focused in our technology over the last 2 years of how do you generate human quality content that contains all of the AI search readiness pieces, including what we used to call SEO, right? Which, by the way, is not dead, again,
Right.
despite what LinkedIn says, right?
I see that
SEO,
all the time. Is
I know.
SEO dead?
It's just, it has evolved a lot, but many of the principles are still the same. So you got to have that human quality content. And so that's what we really focused on. So the core sitting in the center of our platform is a AI content team that writes human quality on brand content. And we've been very lucky to work with a lot of significant brands that people know. And 2 years ago, when we would first give them their content, we had to probably give a human an hour to an hour and a half editing time with each piece of content. We really crossed a point over the last 60 days where now a lot of our clients are doing zero editing, because they know it just feels exactly like how they want to speak. It doesn't read like AI content. So now they can start to get to some sort of reasonable scale in an affordable way.
That's amazing. That I just know, as we've watched over the last couple of years, how AI you can tell it, speak in this voice, learn from my voice, and how quickly it can adapt, and just even certain adjectives it'll use that make it very real.
Well, and I think what's been interesting for me as we've gone through this process is the only way you can create human quality content is to mimic human behavior. So the way that we have to do that, right, is, we'll generate a playbook for a client that says, this is all of your questions you can monetize. This is who currently has the trusted cited source. This is how you beat them. This is the content we're going to write that answers those questions. When a client chooses one of those questions, if they're self-serve or if we do it for them, because we also layer on all the agency type services for the clients that want it, when the topic is chosen behind the scenes, there is a researcher, a copywriter, an editor, an SEO manager, a brand manager, a social media manager, a brand photographer, and none of those people are human. And so there is this collaborative process that happens behind the scenes that sets the direction of the content. It chooses titles based on readability and SEO data. And then it writes the content, right? And so then you get into that next piece of, well, why can't you just generate content with ChatGPT? Well, all of that, because all that's happening inside of what we call their brand lens, our representation of them inside our platform that speaks for them. But then in addition, there are so many little elements that are changing that just help SEO and AI search evolve. Rescanning the website every single article so you can include up-to-date internal links. Rescanning for relevant external links based on what you're talking about, right? All these little things make a real difference. And so that's how we operate.
So talking a little more on the SEO and Google searches and ChatGPT and how that's changing. I mean, clients, we get asked this all the time about how is this different? I've seen, even talking to some agencies that have had higher success rates with, okay, they were getting their client into the top 10 on that Google search, and now they're either still managing to get into the AI overview, or they're not quite sure why they're not getting into the AI overview. Are you seeing what has changed as far as the SEO and the how you manage, let's say, a client's site to make sure their articles are still showing up in the AI overview?
So it's a good question. And, for the last 15 years of marketers, we've had it easy. If you wanted to optimize for organic, you focused on Google SEO. If you wanted to layer in some paid, you started a Google Ads campaign and you targeted the people raising their hand for what you want. Then if you wanted to expand, you went into Facebook and Insta, which is now Meta, obviously. And that was sort of our marketing stack, right? For 80% plus of companies out there. The arrival of AI has just disrupted all of that. And there's a lot less predictability in behavior, and there's a lot less predictability in what's going to work. And so I think companies need a dedicated team who are thinking about that on a day-to-day basis to help them. And that's where an opportunity is for an agency, including us. So what do you have to do? It's interesting. I actually think that the disruption has done something really valuable, and that is going to force everybody into being better marketers. So SEO has always included a lot of spammy tactics, right? It's crazy that we're still talking about backlink buying in 2025, right? It's sort of nonsense. It's sometimes essential, but it's also kind of frustrating and nonsense. And so It's now really just about shifting from a mindset of keywords, right? When we all thought of Google as a search engine, we worried about keywords. Google's
Right.
not a search engine anymore. It's a knowledge engine. And it's a knowledge engine because of AI overviews. It's answering the question on behalf of your audience, right? In some cases. And with AI mode very likely to become default Google experience in Q1, that looks like ChatGPT, right? So it's a knowledge engine. So we can't do optimization like we used to for SEO. Now we have to do optimization as though we're helping a knowledge engine. And so what does that mean? Well, it first means you have to figure out all the questions somebody's audience is asking, stack rank them by volume and priority, etc. And then you have to figure out who they're competing against for trusted cited source. We have a large medical brand client that we've generated over $7 million in Ozempic subscriptions for. They would have told you one of their competitors was like an online Hims and Hers primary care physician type service. It's not. It's healthline.com and it's Vogue magazine. Right? So we have to figure out for every question what the competitor set is for attention, and then we have to do competitive analysis against every one of those and figure out how we beat them for that question. Then what's really nice about this is the next step is you have to generate human quality content that answers the questions your audience are asking. And I'm hoping that makes us all better marketers. There is a short-term phenomena where Google weirdly seems to be prioritizing crappy sounding AI content. It's very short term. That's gonna get fixed and resolved. And you know, my overall message to every client is whenever you're thinking about this stuff, just think, what would a human experience be like that would be rewarding for your customer base? What would make them feel the warm and fuzzies about you? And do that. Don't worry about the rest of this nonsense. And honestly, all this AEO, answer engine optimization, GEO, generative engine optimization, now LLMEO, it's all nonsense, right? I like this umbrella term of AI search because it includes everything Google was, everything Google is, ChatGPT and Perplexity, and just don't get lost in the toxicity of people telling you on LinkedIn that you're doing a terrible job.
There's a lot of noise on LinkedIn. If you believe what you read on LinkedIn, well, we're probably all going to die soon. So that's it. But it's interesting talking about that evolution of, now being a knowledge engine, because I remember talking to companies that just focused on SEO and just putting keywords and then putting things in the metadata like hundreds of times just to make sure those words searched up. And I think, like you said, I do hope that makes us all better marketers, that we're not just putting a bunch of keywords in and actually creating good content.
I think that's true. I think the other piece to this is, the basis of my whole career has been find the bright, shiny object and turn it into something practical and effective that somebody would buy, right? And there's been no brighter, shiny object than AI. I think everybody's still worrying about building AI for how AI is today, and they're losing sight of the fact that sometime next year, we're going to pass 10% of all transactions online or forms filled out were not done by a human, but was done by their personal agent representative.
Right.
And so when you think about AI search today, we're not just thinking about, well, what's the human experience? We're also thinking, well, particularly if you're a Shopify store and that's now embedded into ChatGPT, how are you making sure you're also putting out the right signals that means that agent is going to care about your company when somebody's out there looking for whatever they're looking for? And it's going to be hard for marketers to figure that out, unfortunately, in large part because think about the massive amounts of money that have been put into multi-channel attribution, right? Well, now first touch is going to be transaction. And so all of that modeling sort of disappears out of the window, right? So that's the other part of this. AI search, I have my team always thinking about, okay, how are we also setting these brands up for success from an agentic interactive world?
Well, it's interesting you talking about that because I've been thinking lately every day about, well, what's it going to look like when it's just my AI assistant is talking to someone else's AI assistant and they're going to figure out who buys what.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I have to spend all my days in this. I don't have to. I love it, obviously. Like legit. I just love all this sort of tech and future stuff, but I have to get it out of my head. So I write this thing on Substack called 84, the numbers 84futures.com. And it's exactly that. It's asking those questions about, well, what happens one day when your Zoom representative agent, who sometimes speaks for you, suddenly on your calendar starts declining all your meetings and rejecting you from the meetings? It's like, I can do a better job. That sort of question, right? That's fascinating. When our doppelgangers take over from us as individuals, really interesting future.
That's, and the thing about it is like, that could come so much sooner than we all think. Like, we don't even know that the timeline is accelerating so much faster than I think anybody expected.
I think I got my first email address in university in England in 96. And so we're 29 years really from that point. I would say everybody has to be realizing that the evolution of the internet to get to this point, 29 years. The evolution of AI to get to this point, 3. And it is so much beyond what the internet is, right? And now OpenAI have launched their own browser. It's clunky and it's slow right now, but it's going to be a big part of our futures. And so thinking about optimizing for that is also something. Like, the speed that these changes are coming, phenomenal.
Right. So for companies out there that, say, are looking to dip their toe into AI, but maybe aren't looking to turn everything over and go AI first, what would be the most important AI tool that they could incorporate into their everyday use?
I mean, I think day to day, it's hard to beat ChatGPT.
Right.
You know, I like Claude for certain things. We sit on top of Claude, Anthropic, a whole bunch of other platforms. But I think for a day to day, ChatGPT's really got it nailed. And I think using the voice, not voice to type, but you can actually set up your ChatGPT on your phone so you can have a long conversation with it. And I'll give you a great example. I will often start that conversation going and I will say to it, I'm about to go out for an hour-long walk. Whilst I'm out walking, I'm going to have some ideas and thoughts and to-do items and stuff in my head. And I'm just going to say it to you. And I don't want you to speak back to me. But at the end of the hour, I want you to document everything for me that we talked about. And then I just go for a walk. And as I think about things, I talk. And as I don't, I just stay quiet. And I write beginnings of articles from that. I find to-do lists for my brain that I'd suddenly forgotten about, right? That's the sort of thing I think people should be trying to embrace, because the more familiar and comfortable you are with the technology and the less scary it is, then the more likely you are to find smart ways to incorporate. When it comes to AI search, I think it's interesting. I think everybody has to be careful about all of these tools that are just claiming to fully automate your SEO and AI search. Our biggest source of clients is people who've been using those sorts of tools, right? And they actually prefer a sort of more hybrid approach of technology and human, much more agency-like, but just a fraction of the cost. So I think they have to be careful there. And I think in general, a company should only really be doing something with AI and putting it out there into the world if they feel like they would be proud if somebody read it. If they wouldn't be proud somebody read it, I don't think it should get published.
Absolutely. That's something I hear echoed through a lot of my conversations. Just most agencies I've talked to have not been as let's say up to date on everything you're doing in AI. But I mean, they're doing a good job, but still everybody, okay, we're starting to use it here. We're starting to use it here. But I think overall everyone understands we can't put out something if it doesn't sound like it's clearly the client or the
I think that's right. And I think it's why one of our fastest growing channels is agencies. You'd be surprised at the agencies that are that actually use FOMO.ai in the background. Because of that, right? An agency, it's already a busy world. You're already putting out fires across clients all over the place, right? Margins haven't necessarily increased particularly high for most agencies yet. So they don't have time to go figure out how you make human quality content for less than $50, right? And so agencies end up being a very good channel for us.
Cool. One last question as we wrap up here. I always like to ask if you were talking directly to, say, someone young and getting into marketing or starting their own agency, what would be the number one thing you would tell them to just set them in a good direction? If you could start in this direction and go from there, what would be the top piece of advice you could give them?
I'm going to give you two because the world's very different now. The first piece of advice is, I think people really, whether it's an agency or any other type of startup or business, people put so much time into building something, making something, and they don't put enough time into basic go-to-market techniques, right? Like if somebody was getting into this and they wanted to start their own agency, if they haven't gone and talked to 20 people that they think might be their customers and have figured out from them why their theory is right and wrong, then they have no business starting the business. We see it all the time with tech companies. They'll go burn, $2, $5, $10, $20, $50 million building a platform, and then they turn around and they're like, oh, we need to figure out a way to get customers. And then they realize, well, can't, right? Distribution is the biggest problem in AI tech. The other answer I'd give you is I have 4 kids from the age of 18 to 22. Twins in England. One graduated with a master's in theoretical physics, the other in arts, right? Both of them are perfectly qualified enough to get a job. They can't get a job. One 18-year-old is just started law school in England. One 18-year-old started at KU here in the States. I worry for them what the job market and the opportunities are going to look like coming out of college 4 years from now. So the biggest piece of advice I would give is you have to learn critical thinking skills. That's going to be more and more essential for this world where we already, like if you look at TikTok, you already probably 1 in 5 videos are like, is that AI or is that real?
Definitely.
Roll forward to the end of 2026. There will be no telling that you and I are human or not that we're talking to. That's happening before the end of next year.
Absolutely.
And so all the young people coming into the marketplace, first of all, they're going to have to fight and carve out their own work because junior jobs have been disappearing terribly. And then secondarily, critical thinking skills. And third, they're going to have to learn to be adaptive because there is no such thing anymore as somebody having one job and one career. Those days are for previous generations, and it is not for this generation.
Right. Well, thank you for that insight. I always like to give that little bit of advice out there and hope somebody holds on to some little piece that helps guide them. So thank you so much, Dax Hamman, FOMO.ai. Go check it out. You're doing some awesome work. Thank you, everybody, for watching the What's Working podcast, and we will catch you next time.